Good morning. My name is Manuel Corpas. Thanks very much for this great invitation to speak to this Thai audience. I'm going to be talking today about bridging genomics' greatest challenge, the diversity gap. And I'm hoping to explain why this is a really important issue for society, for longevity, and for the health of a country. First of all, I would like you to imagine this. So a young mother in a remote Ethiopian village rushes to the nearest clinic carrying her infant who is unresponsive. The child was recently prescribed codeine for post-surgical pain management, but what was meant to relieve turned tragic. Unbeknownst to the healthcare providers, the child carried a genetic variant common in Ethiopian populations that make codeine metabolize too quickly, turning it into a toxic substance. This story is not isolated. It underscores the pervasive issue in genomics, the underrepresentation of diverse populations, including Thai populations, for genomic research. And while European ancestry individuals dominate datasets, the rest of the world, which is rich in genetic diversity, remains largely unseen. And this imbalance doesn't just skew scientific findings, it perpetuates scientific and health inequities, leaving millions like that young mother and her child at risk of preventable harm. So today, we face a challenge as well as an opportunity, which is to bridge this gap and ensure genomics serves everyone, everywhere. So this presentation is about unpacking the barriers, highlighting the urgency, and most importantly, exploring solutions to transform this narrative. And I want to start with this seminal work from Alice Popejoy, which showed that as of 2016, 81% of all data that we had in genetics was based in European individuals, individuals of European ancestry. That would include North American individuals. At that point, there were 2,500 genetic studies and 35 million samples. We would have expected that this gap would have narrowed, but actually it has become greater. As of 2022, if we compare the proportion of the global population share in Europeans, which is in red, and the actual amount of genetic data for studies modeling all diseases, you can see that the gap is exponentially increasing. So there are a lot more people that have European ancestry in genetic studies. And why is this important for everybody else? Well, because diverse representation is essential for developing comprehensive and accurate diagnostic tools. And this ensures that the benefits of the scientific advancements are applicable to individuals from all backgrounds, avoiding bias, and makes it more accurate and applicable, this information, for example, for diagnosis, for treatment, and for risk assessment of individuals from different backgrounds. So I want to give an example of, for instance, the Pharmacogenomics, which is the knowledge base of pharmacogenomic study, that is the studies of drug-gene reactions. So we know that our genetics influence our ability to metabolize drugs. If we look at the different regions from around the world, here we have Thailand as East Asian in this particular classification. And then we compare the data that exists from different parts of the world for these data for Pharmacogenomics, which is drug-gene reactions, we can see that it's overwhelmingly European. Here you can see this gene, which is the most important gene for pharmacogenomics data. And you can see that actually CYP2D6, this gene, metabolizes 25% of all prescribed drugs. And when you actually look at the different abilities from different populations to metabolize drugs that are interacting with this particular gene, you can see that actually, depending on where you're from, you're going to have different rates of ultra rapid metabolizer for drugs. For instance, codeine and all of the opioids are metabolized by this gene. And you can see, for instance, here that sub-Saharan African have the greatest proportion, more than 30% of all sub-Saharan Africans. We have no idea of how well or how poorly they're going to metabolize drugs. And this is important because, as I said, this gene is involved in the metabolism of more than 25% of registered drugs, the major classes of antidepressants, beta blockers, antipsychotics, and this makes it difficult to have a fixed dose. Some people with a smaller dose are going to react better. Some people are going to need more. And so you can have a lot of adverse drug reactions if you don't take this variability into account. For instance, there is a duplication there's a genetic variant in this gene that causes serious adverse outcomes with codeine among 30% of Europeans. And since the genetic study of that particular gene in Ethiopia is unfeasible, then codeine is completely banned from Ethiopia, right? There are many other examples that I could give. There's also sex bias. So for instance, women experience a lot more adverse drug reactions than men. And due to their greater life expectancy in many regions of the world, women also comprise higher proportion of the elderly population and are more likely to require polypharmacy, i.e. combinations of drugs. And so they have a greater chance of developing associated risks. And yet this is not well and properly studied because most of the studies actually use males. If we look, for instance, at the clinical trials that have been developed by the FDA, the Foods and Drug Administration, which is the main regulatory body in the United States, 76% of all clinical trials from 2015 to 2019 were developed for people of European ancestry. And then we have 11% for Asian people ancestry. So what this all means is that our ability to stratify high-risk individuals in underrepresentation populations, that is non-Europeans, is compromised, and this results in associated medical practices that are informed by and benefiting only a subset of individuals. And this lack of data in underrepresented populations leads to health inequities. And I want to finish with this quote from the United Nations, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which was adopted by the United Nations on 16th of December, 1966. Everyone should have access to the advancements of science equally. And so currently, this is a very important topic that we need to address. And with that, I would like to say thank you. And I hope that you can pass me questions if you have any. Thanks very much for your attention.